This is our first time having a Generations panel at a 100-year reunion. I'm Sarah. So I think the idea is for people to hear about how camp was, either before they came to camp and how it's been since they've were campers or counselors here. And so I'm just going to have the members of the panel introduce themselves, starting with Bill Van Alstyne, and we'll go down. You can just state your name and the years you were here, and if you're a camper, what staff you were while you were here.
Well, Bill Van Alstyne, I'm a child of the 60s here in Segowea, 61 to 69, something like that.
Thank you.
We're just introducing.
Yeah, just
Okay.
introduction.
David Eilers. I can't recall my first year. I know I was here in 52, 53, 54. Came back as a counselor. 60, oh my gosh, 1, 2, and 3.
Hi, I'm Mark McCandlish. I was here as a teen camper in the early 60s and beyond. I started as a camper. I was here for 3 years and took on a staff role after that, and eventually began working for the Poughkeepsie YMCA as youth director, and then directed the teen camp in 1970.
Hi, I'm Max Martinez, and I've been here since 2010 as a camper and in LIT.
I'm Beth Koloski-Hodis. I started as a camper in 1974. I was among the first girls who were in base camp at Camp Segowea, and I worked here for the next 30 years.
I'm Katie Hussey Lyons. I started here in '93 as a base camper, did senior village, and eventually was girls unit head, and stopped coming here officially in 2003, and then volunteered as counselor from 2009 to 2012.
Richard Thomas. Started at camp 1941 until 1952. My dad was the camp director out here, so I was 0 when I started. And left, basically, I was here for 13 years and left at 13 because I ended up getting a job on a farm.
So this mic is just for recording purposes. That's why you're not hearing anything projecting. So we'll start with the first question, which is, if you were to describe to a new parent today, how would you describe camp when you were at camp? So it's kind of a broad question. So the things that kind of stick out the most to you, what you would be describing to a parent for when you were at camp.
Okay. That's an interesting question because actually my colleague at work, her 2 boys actually came to camp this year for, I guess they were here last year. And they thoroughly enjoyed it last year, and they enjoyed it even more this year. I think camp essentially instills in the 60s it was a boys' camp. It was strictly boys, but you got a way to achieve a goal. It gave an opportunity for a kid to decide for himself at the end of the summer where he wanted to be, whether it's swim to the big dock or, row a boat across the lake. It gave him an opportunity to make his own goal and then succeed. And that really in essence is I think is what camp is all about. And I think it happens till today.
Anyone else like to answer this question? Describing camp.
So I live in Manhattan, so this is a lot different than anything that you can experience there besides going to the park. And here, when I came in 2010, it was the first time that I've been away from my parents for a long period of time. But weirdly enough, I wasn't that homesick. It was actually pretty fun because I could, like he said, I could set goals for myself and actually accomplish them. I never had a chance to do archery or go boating, or swim in a lake like this. So coming here and experiencing those things have like really broadened my experiences.
I'll tell you, the first thing I would tell the parents, your son will be skinny dipping.
That is perhaps something you could not tell a parent today.
All right, well, maybe then sticking with that theme, we'll ask, like, what part of camp life during your time is not part of camp now?
I go far enough back, there's quite a bit that's different. The most memorable years, of course, were the co-ed camp. I was at the very first 1954 co-ed camp, and Dean Temple, General Secretary of the Y, was the one that instituted it. And I think there were 14 or 16 of us. And he lined us up on those stone concrete steps out front, and he said, "The board back in Poughkeepsie are not quite sure of this experiment, but you are going to prove that I'm right about it." He said, "I am making a decision to trust you. I asked you to make a decision to trust me." And he laid out what camp life would entail. What I really enjoyed about it is the freedom. I'll get back to the boys' camp in another comment, but I can remember going up to the ball field. I was 14 at the time, and the guys were saying, "This should be a song. You know, the gals, they can't play ball." Well, we got up on the field, and we started a game of baseball. My gosh, those gals were sluggers. And at one point, one gal hit a ball so far out, the guys in the outfield just watched it and let it fall to the ground, and everybody clapped. The gals, again, with the boys, changed the whole character of the camp. The openness, the freedom, the dialogue, the exchange. It was absolutely superb. And I remember Don and Miriam Asher were also here, and we were asked to mention things we remember. One was Elmer Griffin, the Vassar cook. And I remember saying to Dean Temple, "You know, we are so lucky to have a Vassar cook at this camp." He was silent for a minute, and he looked at me and said, "Yes, but he sure knows how to run up the food bills," which we didn't mind at all. I have other comments, but I think I'll wait until another question.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share about what was part of camp when they were here, which may not exist now?
One big part of camp when we were growing up was the senior village, which is not in existence currently. And that was a program for kids, 13, 14, not quite ready to be leaders in training or counselors in training, but definitely too big for base camp. And I know for myself it goes along with that idea of goal setting, but that hike in the Appalachian Trail and those canoe trips with those people definitely made bonds that I couldn't have gotten anywhere else. So that's one thing.
One of the major differences that I see is in the volunteer weekends. My first volunteer weekend, I arrived. I was stopped in the driveway, not allowed to get out of my car until all the men here would get dressed. Apparently there was a lot of nudity before they brought girls here. And then I went around that day looking for a job to do. And I asked each male work party if I could help, and they kind of patted me on the head and sent me on my way. And I said, "Well, I'll go in the kitchen, and I'll help Mr. Thomas with the dishes. How could they possibly not let me in the kitchen?" So, of course, I walk in the kitchen. I said, "Mr. Thomas, can I help you with the dishes?" "Oh, no. This is a job for a man." So I ended up passing nails to John Fisher. So thank you for letting me be part of my first work party.
There was one activity that we had, and I don't know, I'm not that familiar with the current program, but for 2 or 3 years in the late 60s at teen camp, one of the campers' parents had a motorboat and actually brought it out here, and there was water skiing on Harmon Pond. And I don't know that that's happened much since then, and I don't know if you'd want to do it today, but the pond is just big enough to make kind of one circle, and so people who wanted to participate would get in line, and you get 2 or 3 circles around, and you had to get off, and it was somebody else's turn. So that was kind of interesting, but that was only just for a couple of years.
Thank you. That's the first I've heard of water skiing on the lake. So, yeah. All right. Next question, we'll move on, is something that you learned at camp? I know we've all learned many things at camp. So something that you'd like to share about what you've learned when you were here. Do I have a taker to go first?
I don't know if there's anything that I have specific to tell you, but Dave touched on a little bit. It gave us an opportunity for freedom. It was the first time, especially when we got to the age of being a CIT, and we could go off they'd give us a night off. We go to Pittsfield, or we go to Great Barrington for the night, or we get a day off, and we had an opportunity to go anywhere we wanted. And I've always considered it like the age of discovery. That you had this opportunity that camp offered. That you had the responsibility of this job, and you had to do it, but you also had an opportunity to make decisions for yourself, which was the first time that had that experience, and it was a great learning experience. It's a great way to develop and mature. I'm not saying that it was an easy lesson. We had some difficult times going forward, but made some silly decisions, but that's growing up. Youthful indiscretions, let's say.
I might add one note. When I was at the boys' camp, I know 1952 I was here. I remember that year particularly because my grandfather had died, and my family decided, this is the 50s, he's having fun, don't bring him to the funeral. So they chose the Visitor's Day to tell me about it. I was totally floored. I couldn't eat supper. I was terribly upset. And a camper, I believe by the name of Hugh Amy, who I didn't know very well up to then, tapped me on the shoulder and said, let's go out in the canoe together. And we did. We got out in the middle of the lake, and then he said to me, I know how you feel. My father died. There were 2 young kids, 12 years of age, sharing or probing the depths of human feeling in a relationship. And to me, the Young Boys Camp provided that avenue. And I'm sure it has for many others since.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add to what both the gentlemen said. I agree with Bill that kids come here and they learn how to make choices about their own lives, starting with whether they want to take arts and crafts or nature, that they really have choices. And you can be a child here and not be glued to a best friend. You can move around independently and sort of find out who you are as an individual. And with that, you also meet other children who bring a realm of experiences with them. And like you said, children find out that they're not quite all alone, that there are other children who have had similar experiences, and it becomes a way without the distractions of home and extraneous family and television and media and all of that to actually learn to have a conversation, to learn how to share what you feel and reflect it on others. And I think that is probably the greatest gift that Segowea gives.
Thank you, Beth. Would anyone else like to add any comments to that question? No? Okay. So next, how did any newsworthy events, current events, affect your time at camp? I hear some giggles already, so. Mr. Thomas.
When my father was directing the camp, 1941, that's the December 7th, was the start of World War II. Dad was working at the at the YMCA as the boys director, volunteered himself to join the Army, and they wouldn't take him because he was working at the YMCA with the kids. And what was said to him, he was supposed to stay and take care of the kids at the Y. As far as camp was concerned, an influx of children during World War II came about because the dads were off fighting the war. And I believe the same thing happened during the Korean War. So that news event of World War II kind of prompted more children to head into camp. Thank you.
Now, I've never had to live through such an event such as World War II, but to me, while the time that I've been at camp, all the outside things that have happened have never really affected my experience here. Some more than others, but mainly this was a place that I could go to get away to the outside world and just have fun here and make my own decisions and be exposed to freedom, as he said. So it was really just with camp, I was able to come here and get away from a lot of things and just have fun. So anyone else?
One of the really standing activities at teen camp was a discussion group. And although we were, relatively speaking, pretty isolated from, what was going on in the world, of course we didn't get day-by-day news or minute-to-minute news like we do now, but